So this is your first case vignette. 58-year-old male, known case of hypertension on irregular amlodipine, is brought to ER at 14:30 hours, 45 minutes after sudden onset of severe headache, vomiting and right-sided weakness while gardening. There's no history of trauma, falls, anticoagulant or antiplatelet use, alcohol excess or prior stroke. On examination, GCS is E3, V4, M5, that is 12. BP of 210 by 118 mm of mercury. Heart rate is 96 per minute regular. Respiratory rate of 22 per minute. SpO2 of 26% on room air. Temperature of 37.1 degrees centigrade. Pupils were 3 mm equal and reactive. Right-sided hemiplegia, power 1 by 5 in right upper and lower limb. Normal tone and power on the left. Plantar mute on right. Flexor on left. Sugars were 142 mg per dl. There were no signs of trauma or neck rigidity. Now you went ahead and got a non-contrast CT head done, which was done within 60 minutes of onset. And it shows you a 35 mil hyperdense lesion in the left basal ganglia with mild extension into the left lateral ventricle, perilesional edema, and no midline shift greater than 5 mm. Has everyone gone through the case vignette?
Yes, we have. As you read it, we followed.
Okay, fine. So now further questions will be formed on based on this only. GCS 12 does not mandate intubation by itself, but you reassess your trend closely. If the GCS goes down to less than or equal to 8, think in terms of intubation for airway protection, loss of protective reflexes, or anticipated clinical or radiological deterioration. You give your supplemental oxygen only if your SpO2s are less than 94%. So avoid routine hyperoxia or prophylactic hyperventilation. You use a large bore IV access, you do your cardiac monitoring or ECG, and catecholamine surge can actually lead to neurogenic stunned myocardium or ECG changes. Begin your controlled antihypertensive therapy. Now, as we go further down, this is a question that has been mentioned. When it comes to disability, you do your serial GCS scoring, you do your NIHSS course, you do your pupillary checks, glucose check. It is already 142 milligram per deciliter. So right at this point in time, there is no immediate correction needed. Temperature control in terms of treating fever, your target is normothermia. When it comes to positioning, you do a head up 30-degree positioning, a midline neck position to aid venous drainage. Avoid hypotonic or dextrose containing fluids, which can worsen cerebral edema. Avoid unnecessary sedation that can mask your neurostatus. If you have a system of that type, you can do a rapid code stroke activation and you try to find out your door to CT and door to BP control targets are basically time critical analogs to ischemic stroke pathways. Now, this is a hemorrhagic stroke, but still they would be like your analogs to ischemic stroke pathway. You should use the Hemphill ICH score 2001. It is still the most widely used bedside severity or mortality predictor. What are the things it contains is GCS at presentation. You can look it up later. It's part of, stroke guidelines. It's part of AHA, ICH guidelines. Then you look at ICH volume. It is 35 ml, so more than or equal to 30 ml scores 1 point. Intraventricular hemorrhage, yes, it is present, so 1 point. Infratentorial origin, no, because basal ganglia is supratentorial, then there are 0 points. Age, more than or equal to 80 years, no. Age 58 is 0 points. Total ICH score is 3, which in the original cohort corresponded to approximately 72% predicted 30-day mortality. So Hemphill score is something that you should all read about and know about. What immediate investigations would you order in your first hour? Okay.
It's nice.
Okay. TD. Anything else? CT series, routine lab, statement. Okay. So you should have a sequence basically that you should be able to recite there. So our patient's basal ganglia location in the setting of known poorly controlled hypertension is your usual classic hypertensive ICH pattern. What is the role and optimal imaging timing of repeat CT imaging in the acute phase? You do your repeat NCCT heads at approximately 6 hours from the baseline scan or from the symptoms onset, and that is a reasonable timeline in any patient who has got a sizable hematoma such as this one, especially if you were able to document a spot sign or if they had a coexistent coagulopathy or an ongoing anticoagulant reversal. If there's any unexplained neurological deterioration in the form of drop in GCS of more than or equal to 2, new focal deficit, pupillary change or rising ICP signs, you should actually, do an immediate repeat imaging. For hemodynamically and neurologically stable patient without any expansion risk factors, Routine imaging beyond the 6 hour and any clinical worsening scan will add limited value. If you do a follow-up imaging, it can be also used to assess evolving hydrocephalus, perihematomal edema trajectory, and to plan for a possible delayed surgical intervention effect. Okay, this is another favorite question of mine. I'd like to always ask my students that what is the role of MRI in the workup of ICH and when should it be obtained? So what you are looking at is our two sequences here, GRE or the gradient echo sequence, or susceptibility weighted imaging or SWI, which detects your chronic microbleeds and superficial siderosis. That will diagnose your amyloid angiopathy. If you're doing your MRI with contrast, it can actually unmask an underlying structural lesion. It may be tumor, cavernoma, which may be obscured acutely by blood products on CT. If you're doing a delayed MRI, which is typically 4 to 6 weeks after an acute bleed, once hemoglobin degradation products have evolved, that is the standard approach to unmask an underlying cavernoma or small tumor in an atypical or a young patient with bleed, as acute hemorrhage can obscure the lesion.